So the Dutch politician Geert Wilders um, has launched or been connected to, I don't know if it was his initiation or not, but um, he's been connected to competition or an entry contest, whatever way you want to describe it, for people to draw pictures of the Prophet Muhammad and send them in. And this has sort of been doing the rounds on the internet. I've come off a discussion forum in which this issue was brought up, and the main question is why is it so contentious? Well, there's a few things I want to make as a disclaimer here before I get into how I feel about this approach. Number one, I do believe that there is a huge problem within the religion of Islam with sensitivity. This is absolutely irrefutable. When you look at countries like Pakistan, which is a deeply religious country, um, the fact is people can be murdered, brutally lynched to death, like young Michelle Khan last year, over alleged blasphemy. So to say that Islam is a sensitive religion is an understatement. It's extremely sensitive, and I don't think anyone can rationally claim otherwise. There's plenty of evidence to indicate that. This is not to say that every Muslim is fanatical, firebranding, sort of beheadly infidel, sort of reactionary. Of course not. But there is deep sensitivity within Islam. They may also say, I think blasphemy laws are repugnant, especially the way they're used as a weapon to persecute minorities in conservative Islamic societies. So when we hear the line that Islam is peace and Islam is tolerance, I think that view needs to be challenged when there is so much evidence to suggest quite the contrary under Islamic jurisdictions. There are peaceful and tolerant individual Muslims, but in terms of Islamic theocracy, that's just a completely flawed argument. So, having said all that, you would probably assume that I'm all for these drawings, but actually, I'm not particularly supportive of them, and this is why they don't achieve anything. If the intention is to say, well, look, we're going to draw these pictures of Muhammad, many Muslims find that offensive. We're going to see their reaction, and that proves how Islam is intolerant. I think it's a bit fickle. I believe in challenging religion. I believe in challenging religious sensitivities. And I think there is no moral equivalency whatsoever between offense and violent threat. So no one can use being offended as an excuse to issue threats or anything like that. And it isn't just in Islam, you get this in other religions too, such as earlier this year when the Hindu extremists threatened UK cinemas if they went ahead with that film. So you get that in other religions too, but I think it is particularly noticeable within Islam. Anyway, yeah, I just don't think it particularly achieves anything. Now, to any Muslim viewers, if you haven't switched off already, if you're still listening, thank you. I have a simple question. Why is portrayals of the Prophet considered offensive? Why? I think it's legitimate to ask the question because for non-Muslims it is quite hard to understand how a mere depiction of somebody, a historic figure, a very important historic figure, is offensive. It also seems to be something of a mixed message because, unless I'm mistaken, the Prophet has been depicted in historic art and by actors on screen in the past. Certainly not as widespread as depictions of Jesus, but there have been historic depictions of Muhammad in art. Now, of course, Islam's a major religion. You get different branches. For example, Sufi Islam tends to focus a lot on spirituality as opposed to dogmatic Islamic law and so on. So there's different branches of Islam, and perhaps the depiction of the Prophet come into that dynamic. But of course, that's part of it because internal sectarianism within Islam is rife. The number of Muslims who get murdered for not being true Muslims, um, or being apostates is a very serious problem. But just because something can be done doesn't mean it should be done. What I mean by that is, I don't believe that artists should be punished for depicting the Prophet, but I don't really see the point of it. If millions of Muslims say this is offensive, then what purpose does it serve? To me, it's a bit like the Burn the Quran Day. Not quite as inflammatory, but still, it serves no purpose. It's not serving a purpose of criticizing Islam. It's not serving a purpose of criticizing the violent intolerance of pan Islamism. It's just being provocative for the sake of it. Now, I don't understand why depictions of the Prophet are offensive, but I know that they are. Um, I don't think people's overt sensitivities should be overly accommodated, but by the same token, I don't think people should go out of the way to offend. And it seems to me that's what Geert Wilders is doing. What does it achieve? What does it achieve? There may well be many Muslims who do find this offensive, but they are also anti-Islamism and they're against threats against the artists. So to me, it polarizes those people. I just don't think it achieves anything. Um, I do think there's a big difference between crude, crass images, for example, showing the Prophet. I saw one image where they're showing him as a pig, and his excrement said Quran, and that's just crass. It doesn't achieve anything. I think that's very different from a depiction which is just a depiction of a middle-aged man. I mean, a depiction could be a positive depiction. It could show him as a strong, wise leader, right? So I do think it's a legitimate question to ask. Well, why is it so offensive, right? So that's the question. But we know that it is. We know that many Muslims don't feel that he should be depicted. So why do it? I just don't think it achieves anything. If I can make an analogy, and I know I bring this into a lot of videos, but I think it's just an analogy about sensitivity. In Thailand, the monarchy is an extremely sensitive subject. Any perception of questioning the monarchy or insult to monarchy will result in a lèse majesté charge. And even outside that, even outside the legal area, there's a very strong chance you will be bombarded with vitriolic messages from enraged Thai royalists. Um, Now, their sensitivity is absurd, and I've seen it firsthand. I've seen what they're capable of, and I've got very strong views on the sort of intolerance that comes with that. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go to Thailand and deliberately insult the monarchy because I know it's it wouldn't serve any purpose. It wouldn't. It might serve the purpose of showing how intolerant the situation is, but it wouldn't serve a purpose insofar as opening minds. Now, I grant you that there are people out there whose minds will not be opened. There are Islamists out there who are so dogmatic in their views and so, I guess you could say, brainwashed that they're not going to see any sort of reason. So they're not interested in adult debate and discussion on these things. But the point I would make is the Muslims who are, all this does is polarize them. When you know something is sensitive to someone and you're deliberately trying to get under the skin, I don't see what that achieves. I think it's legitimate to ask why it's sensitive, but to recopy the images or to, share crude, insulting images, I don't see the point of that. I mean, here's another example. You wouldn't go into a church or a mosque topless, male or female, and start smoking or drinking and just mess around. It would be disrespectful. And I think most reasonable people can see that that's a disrespectful act. To me, it's about basic respect. It's not about, and I wouldn't support Muslims demanding special treatment, but I don't think that's necessarily the issue. I think if we think about it, we all we're all probably sensitive about something, whether we admit it or not. There's people out there who take great pride in saying, "Oh, you're all snowflakes. I'm not sensitive about anything." But I think if you push someone enough, you will find that everybody has an area that they're sensitive about. I'll freely admit there's things I'm not comfortable talking about, debating about, because I've had very it reminds me of negative experiences that I've had, and I just sometimes I lose my temper, and it's not something that I try to avoid it. So the point I'm making is that anyone who says that they're not sensitive about anything, I would question that. Some people are obviously a lot more sensitive than others, and without question, there are Muslims in this world who are, will want to behead the infidel at the tiniest provocation, which could be a depiction of the Prophet. I remember about 10 years ago there was a teacher in Sudan, and she had death threats because she got her students to draw the Prophet. Now, at the time, I felt that was horrendous. I still do, and those death threats were disgusting, and the response was pathetic. And in her case, it was an honest mistake. She didn't realize it was offensive. So I would hope that reasonable Muslims would absolutely condemn any sort of violent threats. But in terms of the act itself, doing it solely for this purpose, which Geert Wilders is doing it to provoke, I don't see the point of that. It's not like he's opening up a debate to say, um, should we should we tolerate Islamic sensitivities? Is Islam too sensitive? What he's doing is taking the thing which he knows offends Muslims and just, I think he's just trying to provoke. Now, if there's any sort of threats against Geert Wilders, that's not proportionate, and I would absolutely condemn that. But I just don't see the point of it. That's all. Let me know your thoughts.